Good evening and thank you so much for joining us on tonight's edition of the Zanis News Today, when Africa is commemorating the Africa Freedom Day. Of course, it's one Zambia, one nation, as we continue to enjoy the peace that Africa and of course Zambia is celebrating over the years. We look at the headlines. President Hichilema honors 22 Zambians. Councils warned against exploiting citizens seeking land. Central Province produces 3 million bags of maize, plus 1.6 million CDF projects commissioned in Chembe. My name is Kalan Mchima to present the news. And now, the news in detail. President Hakainde Hichilema has honored and awarded 22 citizens for their contribution to the country at a colorful investor ceremony in commemoration of Africa Freedom Day. Former Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ chairperson and first female High Court judge, Florence Mumba, was one of the recipients honored for her commitment and dedication to the country's judicial system. Mutalekani was at State House and filed in this report.
President Hakainde Hichilema has awarded various deserving men and women with honors for excellent service in different fields. The head of state awarded deserving recipients during an investiture ceremony that was held at State House this morning in commemoration of Africa Freedom Day. Among those honored are former Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ chairperson, and the first woman High Court judge in the country, Florence Mumba. Justice Mumba received the Order of Distinguished Service, First Division, alongside former diplomat Robert Mataka. Other notable recipients are Commonwealth and African 400-meter champion Muzala Samkonga, who received the President's insignia for meritorious achievement, while veteran journalist Mpundu Mwape was honored with the Order of Distinguished Service, Second Division. Others who received honors are Margaret Shezongo and Esther Mlaisho. Freedom fighter Akaviwa Mbikusita Lewanika, Bishop David Njovu, and Leonard Chunga received honors posthumously. The ceremony was characterized by entertainment that included musical performances and dancing. The theme for Africa Freedom Day is Acceleration of the African Continental Free Trade Area Implementation. Mtalakani for Zanis News in Lusaka.
Earlier, President Hakainde Hichilema laid wreaths at the Freedom Statue in remembrance of foreign heroes who fought for the continent's liberation. The president was joined by cabinet ministers, senior government officials, members of the diplomatic corps, and freedom fighters. In Zambia, United National Freedom Fighters Association Treasurer Bet Chilunga called for preservation of peace and unity on the continent. Lakson Makosa filed in this report.
President Hakainde Hichilema today laid dignitaries, service chiefs, and members of the diplomatic corps in laying wreaths at the Freedom Statue to mark the commemoration of the African Freedom Day, which falls on the 25th of May annually. The African Freedom Day is an important event set aside to commemorate the founding of the Organization of African Unity, or AU, presently known as the African Union, AU. The event was characterized by singing of Christian hymns, Bible readings, and sharing of God's Word. And in delivering homily, Zambia Correction Service Head of Chaplain, Assistant Commissioner Reverend Sam Zulu, implored Zambians to strive working hard as opposed to asking for handouts.
Remind Zambians and Zambia this morning that wealth is a creation and a product of hard work. There's no magic in making money. God himself in his words tells us in the book of Genesis that man shall eat out of his own sweat. And so as a country, we need to cultivate the spirit of hard work and continue to utilize our resources and turn them into wealth. We need to stop, as Zambians, to keep on chasing pastors and prophets for miracle money, but we need to turn to the land and work our land to make money.
Freedom fighters present at the ceremony urged Zambians to guide the peace that Zambia is currently enjoying jealously.
Should continue to guard and maintain the peace that has prevailed in this country. This day is a very important day to the African countries.
Day, it's a very, very important day to remember how we struggled to bring independence, which we are enjoying these days.
Calls for African countries to unite and seek economic liberation took center stage.
As Africans, we need this constant reminder that Africans must unite. And when you look at the theme for this year, which speaks to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, I think that this is what our founding fathers had always envisaged, that Africa could unite, become one. Where
I think this, to me, is an opportunity for Africa to wake up again and be the giant that it once was. We're talking about economic emancipation here. I think that's where we should be focused as a people, and we can continue to be a beacon of light as Zambia in achieving that, especially that we have a flourishing democracy in which we allow people to be productive and to give their best, really. It's a pivot.
The commemorations of this year's African Freedom Day was held under the theme Acceleration of the African Continental Free Trade Area Implementation. For Zanis, I'm Lakson Makodza.
And of course, Southern Province Minister Cornelius Mwetwa has called on Zambians to be productive in order to facilitate the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area. Mr. Mwetwa observes that the country will contribute nothing to the Continental Free Trade Area as long as the country is not producing anything. The minister notes that the country has emerging trade opportunities that it should take advantage of, especially in the agricultural sector that has produce on high demand from neighboring countries. Mike Munkombwe reports that Mr. Mwetwa was speaking after laying wreaths at the Choma Cenotaph to mark Africa Freedom Day. Here's a report.
Improving productive capacities and promoting investment for value addition has remained a prerequisite for implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This is why, during this year's Africa Freedom Day commemoration, Southern Province Minister Cornelius Mwetwa called on the people in the province and the country at large to remain productive.
Calling upon all the other provinces and the rest of the nation to be productive, because if you are not producing anything, then even if the free trade area is implemented, there is nothing you are going to contribute in the, in that kind of trade environment. So we are calling on fellow citizens to engage in productivity. Here we are talking about yawning demand of maize in the neighboring countries. This coming rainy season, we would like to see all provinces and all citizens engage in agriculture, engage in farming.
Mr. Mwetwa equally knows that peace and unity is cardinal.
Charity begins at home. We must be able to exemplify ourselves as leaders in the promotion of democracy, peace, love, unity in the country, so that freedom, which was fought for at a very high cost, can be meaningful.
The freedom fighters wants the efforts of those who first created the way to be recognized.
This is why we must pay tribute to our gallant pioneers, because without them uprooting these obstacles, these diabolical colonial imperialistic, kind of evils, there was no way economic stability would be achieved.
Mike Munkombwe, Zanis, in Choma District, Southern Province.
On that note, we take a break, and still to come, councils warned against exploiting citizens seeking land. Join us shortly.
For news and current affairs, entertainment, sports, children's programs, and a host of other events in and beyond our borders, Zanis TV has you covered. On Channel 6 and Channel 458 on Topstar. Zambia will next month host the 22nd Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa Summit for the heads of state and government at the Mulungushi International Conference Center, Kenneth Kaunda Wing. The summit will take place from the 6th to the 8th of June 2023. The theme of the summit is Economic Integration for a Thriving COMESA, anchored on green investment, value addition, and tourism. over 3,000 delegates from the COMESA member states and beyond are expected to attend the COMESA summit in Lusaka. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Information and Media.
Welcome back. We continue with the rest of the news. In Central Province, Provincial Minister Credo Nanjua has directed councils in the region to stop exploiting citizens through the sale of land. In his Africa Day message, Mr. Nanjua says many people paid money to the local authorities but have not yet been given any land. Details in the following report.
As Zambia commemorates the Africa Freedom Day, Central Province Minister Credo Nanjua has directed councils in the province to stop exploiting citizens by getting money from them and pretending that they are selling them pieces of land. Mr. Nanjua says some people paid to local authorities money for pieces of land some years back, but they have not been shown their pieces of land up to today, describing it as an infringement to their rights and freedoms.
This is very important for us. We have achieved the political freedom from the colonial masters, but what is it that can make Africa move forward? We have to accelerate trade. We have to do away with a lot of trade barriers. In public offices, they should take responsibility that there is no exploitation of our people who are not in offices, because we are saving them. Can you imagine how many people today here in the Central Province are complaining of having paid for land to the councils, and yet they have not been given a piece of land? That's exploitation of our own citizens. And on that point, I want to call upon all councils in the province to give a status quo of all those who have paid for land in the past and they have not gotten their pieces of land. I want to know the status quo and what measures they are putting in place to ensure that we are clearing that backlog.
In a homily, Zambia Army Chaplain, Warrant Officer Class 1 Reverend Wilbrod Chintu has called for all Zambians to be one.
This word echoes that we are no longer under the yoke of slavery, but free. We are set free for freedom. Stand firm, Africa, and implement a free trade area in our continent.
A freedom fighter, Ferry Daneva, has bemoaned the excessive beer drinking among youths, which she says is contributing to moral decay.
Mujani mwemu abana waru amanyanya chefyani waru zibani kusunga ino ziko iti mpokerani se utapoka ziko ibaya tularukwe bali bantu hapa befwira chimucha.
For Zanis, I'm Simeon Mbewe in Kabwe, Central Province.
A timely advice there from our freedom fighters. But still on freedom, we move to Northern Province, where Provincial Minister Leonard Mbao says government is working tirelessly to ensure that Zambia attains economic independence as visioned by freedom fighters. Tanzanga Mumba reports that the provincial minister was speaking when he graced the Africa Freedom Day celebrations in Kasama. Here's a report.
Africa Day, also known as African Freedom Day, is an annual event that celebrates the foundation of the African Union, AU, previously called the Organization of African Unity. It signifies a symbol of the undying spirit of the liberation struggle of the African freedom fighters. And while many African countries, including Zambia, are politically independent, they have not attained full economic freedom. And this is why the country, on the commemoration of AU's 60th anniversary, is looking forward to the realization of economic freedom. Northern Province Minister Leonard Mbao, who graced the commemorations of African Day in Kasama, reaffirmed government's commitment to this cause.
We still remain with the economic freedom which we want to accelerate now. I think His Excellency, the President of this country, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, has set the agenda. As long as we remain in the economic captivity that we are still in bondage.
Mr. Mbao also recognized the significance of Zambia's freedom fighters.
Our forefathers saw it fit that we do whatever it can to make sure, whatever we can to liberate this country, to liberate Africa as a whole. And today, as we are standing, we are a free people.
Representatives of freedom fighters who attended the commemorations shared their sentiments.
Abana kukula kuntanshi bakeseikala wino tusielefe abana sana ngomba tefo kuteko watu monapo kuteko ba nyudo wisi kutulole kesiepo.
This year's Africa Day is celebrated under the theme Accelerating the Impact of the African Continent Free Trade Area to Bring Prosperity to the Continent. Ntazanga Mumba for Zanis in Kasama District.
We take it to Northwestern Province, where Zambia joins the rest of the continent in commemorating Africa Freedom Day. Chavuma District has its own heroes and heroines of the liberation struggle. Josephine Banda reports that Moses Luneta of Chavuma stands out for the role he played in the liberation struggle. Here's a report.
Today, Zambia and the rest of the continent is celebrating African Freedom Day, a day attached to the liberation of Africa. In Chavuma district of Northwestern Province, one man by the name of Moses Luneta stands out for the role he played in the liberation struggle.
This is late Moses Luneta. So these are our heroes who fought for this independence, who fought for this freedom. We are enjoying in Chavuma, Northwestern Province, and Zambia region. He died with 7 or 8 soldiers who crossed the mighty Zambezi to pick him from where he was staying, Makinjira village.
As a way of remembering the fallen freedom fighter, the government maintains this memorial site in his honor.
We as the government would like to maintain the burial site for our freedom fighters, for historicals and for as a heritage and the history that people should be able to understand and know that these are the people who fought for the freedom that we're enjoying.
As for Luneta, much more has been done in his hometown of Chavuma to keep his legacy alive.
Moses Luneta was formerly known as Chavuma Mission Aided School. The school was established in 1937. In 1985, the school changed its name to Moses Luneta in memory of the freedom fighter by the name of Moses Chinyama Luneta. What we do to recognize this freedom fighter by the name of Moses Luneta Chinyama, we always inform our pupils, even during the assemblies. We do also some dramas so that they are able to recognize the importance of this freedom fighter.
Today, Luneta may be dead, but his legacy lives on, and generations to come will keep learning about this youth from a small town who died in the most cruel way for the sake of freedom. Reporting for Zanis, I'm Josephine Banda in Chavuma.
As we continue commemorating Africa Day, Kwacha Member of Parliament Charles Mulenga has called on African leaders to promote peace and unity on the African continent in order to achieve meaningful development. The commemoration of this year's Africa Freedom Day is unique as the Organization of African Unity, or AU, which changed its name to African Union, AU, celebrates 60 years of existence. Jonathan Mkuka now reports.
Zambia has joined the rest of the African countries on the continent in commemorating the African Freedom Day. The 2023 African Freedom Day is unique because the Organization of African Unity, or AU, formed in 1963, which later changed into African Union, AU, as on this day celebrated its 60 years of existence. Speaking on the sidelines of the African Freedom Day commemoration, Kwacha Constituency Member of Parliament Charles Mulenga says this day is very important on the calendar of the African countries.
Africa Freedom Day is a very, very important day on the African calendar. This is the day when we actually remember the fallen heroes that fought running battles at the time when we were getting our independence.
Mr. Mlenga is calling on Zambian people to remain peaceful and united.
The fact that peace that we actually gained from colonial masters, it is something that we have to nurture very, very well. In mind, I have countries that are in conflict, countries that have leadership that do not actually put peace as a cornerstone.
Meanwhile, veteran journalist Mpundu Sekomwape, who worked for the National Agricultural Information Services, NAIS, was one of the 22 people honored by President Hakainde Hichilema during the investiture ceremony held at State House.
Great honor in that the humble background that I've enjoyed, I didn't realize that my contribution would make such an impact.
The 2023 African Freedom Day has been celebrated under the theme Acceleration of the African Continental Free Trade Area Implementation. Jonathan reporting for Zanis News at State House in Lusaka.
Away from Africa Freedom Day commemorations, now we look at other issues where Central Province has produced over 3 million by 50 kilogram bags of maize in the just ended 2022-2023 agricultural season. Provincial Permanent Secretary Miuna Mwanakampwe says the province has produced 3,568,000 bags of maize, out of which 2 million bags will be supplied to the Food Reserve Agency, FRA. Mr. Mwanakampwe has since urged farmers not to sell their maize to briefcase buyers who are offering lower prices. The Central Province Permanent Secretary has urged farmers in the province to clean their maize stocks in readiness for sale. And Mr. Mwanakampwe warned people involved in the smuggling of maize and meal that they will be dealt with. He disclosed that the truck, which was impounded last week for attempting to smuggle 1,200 by 25 kilogram bags of meal to neighboring Congo DR, DR has been handed over to the Zambia Revenue Authority, ZRA, where the owner has been officially charged. Mr. Mwanakampwe warned that people involved in illegalities will not be condoned, as the law will deal with them, and advise people to desist from claiming that they are connected to people in authority.
Central Province alone has been given an allocation of 100,000 metric tons of maize, which translates into 2 million by 50 kg bags of maize that must be bought. And you may wish to know that the production for this year, for Central Province alone, stands at over 3,568,000 bags by 50 kgs. So our appeal is to our farmers not to offload their maize to people who are buying at 4 kwacha when government is buying at 5 kwacha 6 tengwe.
Still ahead in the news, 1.6 million CDF projects commissioned in Chembe. Stay with us.
For news and current affairs, entertainment, sports, children's programs, and a host of other events in and beyond our borders, Zanis TV has you covered. On Channel 6 and Channel 458 on Topstar. Zambia will next month host the 22nd Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa Summit for the heads of state and government at the Munungushi International Conference Center, Kenneth Kaunda Wing. The summit will take place from the 6th to the 8th of June 2023. The theme of the summit is Economic Integration for a Thriving COMESA, anchored on green investment, value addition, and tourism. Over 3,000 delegates from the COMESA member states and beyond are expected to attend the COMESA Summit in Lusaka. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Information and Media.
We now take you to Luapula Province, where Provincial Minister Derek Chilundika has commissioned 2 Constituency Development Fund CDF projects valued at 1.3 million kwacha and disbursed CDF grants worth 2.1 million kwacha to 161 cooperatives and clubs in Chembe District. Mr. Chilundika, who was represented by Acting Provincial Deputy Permanent Secretary John Mwansha observes that the disbursement of funds comes at a time when Chembe district is positively developing into an economic hub. Mijelo Mwembana reports.
161 cooperatives and clubs are the recent beneficiaries of the 2023 Constituency Development Fund grants in Chembe district. Luapula Province Minister Derek Chilundika, who was represented by Acting Luapula Province Deputy Permanent Secretary John Mwasha, handed over the checks to the cooperatives and clubs worth 2.1 million kwacha before proceeding to commission the 1x4 classroom block at Twalubuka Primary School and Temfwe Market.
The Constituency Development Fund grants have become part of the government vision and creative power to enable Zambians to benefit from CDF in numerous ways by involving organized groups to source funds for their Constituency Development Fund for the expansion of their businesses.
Ndaramanga mwapoka mwayakulya bachamanyi eba yafumya vyendalama chinshinshi no eba kwaba nabo ati nimfumya awe ififine mwishire pano efyo na mukufumya endalama mwatangishanya mwafumya mwapanga na budget.
Chembe District Commissioner Christopher Mwansa, represented by District Agricultural Coordinator Tom Mwansabamba, has thanked the government for fostering development in the district.
We are very happy and excited because the development that we are seeing now happening in our district, it really stands and shows that the government that you are representing really cares for the people.
One of the recipients of the grants, Miengele Beekeepers Club, has appreciated this gesture by government. Later, the provincial minister, through his representative, handed over the school infrastructure to the District Education Board Secretary Frank Malama and the market infrastructure to Chembe Council Secretary Grace Kanyata. A tree planting exercise was conducted at Twalubuka Primary School as a National Assembly policy of curbing negative climate change. Mijelo Mwemba reporting for Zanis in Chembe District, Luapula Province.
Still on CDF, Monze Central Constituency has embarked on an ambitious program to rehabilitate and construct infrastructure using Constituency Development Fund, CDF. Member of Parliament Jack Mwimbu says following the increase in CDF, his constituency is constructing a 1x3 classroom block and a police post, among others. Sunday Walia reports that the lawmaker was speaking when he inspected CDF projects under construction in Monze constituency. Here's a report.
Monze Central Constituency Member of Parliament Jack Mwimbo says his constituency has embarked on an ambitious program to rehabilitate and construct new infrastructure using CDF. Mr. Mwimbo says following the increase in CDF from the paltry 1.6 million kwacha to 28.3, Monze constituency is constructing a 1.3 classroom block and a police post, among other infrastructure. He was speaking when he inspected the CDF projects under construction in his constituency.
We, as the constituency of Monze Central Constituency, have embarked on a project of ensuring that we rehabilitate and build new school infrastructure. Arising from the decision of the UPND through the President of the Republic of Zambia, wherein free education was provided, we have been overwhelmed by the enrollment of pupils in almost all the schools in the constituency. As a result of the interest that has been generated by the free education policy of government, we have decided to resolve the issue of lack of classroom space. We have constructed a number of classroom blocks in various parts of the constituency.
And Chiawara School head teacher Felix Ricando explained that additional classroom block will add to the number of classes to cater for over 800 pupils at the school.
This school has about 820 pupils. So we have a challenge of learning space. So like it has come to our aid by building this 1x3.
Meanwhile, a contractor working on the project, Twambo Hangoma, shared his thoughts.
75%, almost 80%. I think so. Normally 1 month time.
Sandra reporting for Zanis in Monze District, Southern Province.
We take you back to Central Province, where Mumbwa District Commissioner Namukolo Hayumbu says that the formation of Community Forest Management Group will help the government in preservation and restoration of forests. Mr. Hayumbu says indiscriminate cutting down of trees, if not checked, has the potential of affecting biodiversity in the district. Here's a report.
Zambia is still regarded as one of the most forested countries in the Southern African region, with forests still covering approximately 55% of the country's total land area. However, reports by some environmentalists indicate that over 60% of residents in Zambia's urban areas still rely on charcoal and firewood for cooking, which has led to indiscriminate cutting down of trees, mainly for charcoal production. This problem has been exacerbated further by putting the remaining forests under extreme pressure from deforestation, encroachment, and unsustainable agricultural practices. In order to reverse this trend, the government has partnered with Senior Chief Shakumbela in enforcing the Forest Act in a bid to enhance, among many others, sustainable forestry management practices through community forest management groups.
This is among the government strategies to reduce deforestation and land degradation. A visionary leader, His Excellency the President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. I believe the ministry is a cornerstone to socio-economic development and should contribute to uplifting the livelihood of our people through community forest management. Today we are handing over the community forest management agreement between the government and the community. Government will partner with the community in management and conservation of forest resources. Let me assure you that government, through the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, partner with the community of Mumbwa to safeguard the environment, which is a cornerstone of all economic activities through the community forest management.
Has agreed to transfer management authority of the forest resources for the purpose of communal control, use and management of Shakumbila Community Forest Management Group. Don't forget that you need to keep the Director of Forestry informed of any developments, changes and occurrences within the community forests, which are critical for the conservation of the biodiversity.
It is estimated that Zambia annually loses about 1,000 hectares of natural forests, largely due to deforestation and conversion of forests to other land uses such as agriculture.
We as communities are aware that Zambia has one of the deforestation rates in the world. Losing between 250,000 to 3,000 hectares of forest every year.
If you ask the average person involved in charcoal production why they do it, they'll first of all tell you it's a source of livelihood. And the second reason is it's a source of energy. There is a yawning market for the product in our cities, just a stone's throw away from here.
Sector is an important economic player in Zambia, providing thousands of families with livelihoods. Zanis reports in Mumbwa District, Central Province.
The Eastern Province Health Office has received a donation of medical kits from an organization called Family Health Nutrition. The medical supply is meant to enhance service delivery for nurses and midwives operating in the maternity wards. Details in the following report.
The increasing rate of maternal mortality and stillbirths in Eastern Province continues to be a source of concern to government and stakeholders. Now, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, working with Family Health Nutrition, FHN, wants to change this narrative through the donation of assorted training kits to enhance the skills of medical staffs who deal with childbirths. This was at a ceremony held at the Provincial Medical Office in Chipata. Dr. Francis Mubanga, clinical care specialist, obstetrician, has received the donated items on behalf of the Ministry of Health.
These gadgets are quite expensive. If you look at them, they're quite expensive. And they're not easy to find, and we usually get them through donations. So what we need to do is also look after them. We could have had a similar kind of mannequins available for demonstrations, but maybe they may not be in good shape, such that those alarms and all those little vital signs that you want to see once you are resuscitating may not appear. So when you go back in real practice and try to practice, you may find that you are getting a very different picture. So what we are doing is we want this neonatally to be used effectively.
And Principal Nursing Officer Standards at the Provincial Health Office, Samuel Chizalila, knows the importance of the donated kits.
Are really going to help our staff, because in the presentation, what we want is skills. You know, when you go to college, you go to school, when you graduate, does not mean that that person is 100% is going to perform better. Even a doctor has graduated today. That person needs to have what we call experience, isn't it? So there are certain gadgets which you use to make sure that that person has graduated.
According to current statistics, Eastern Province continues to be among those leading in maternal deaths and stillbirths.
The numbers are alarming. Nimba, for example, neonatal deaths and stillbirths, 124. What we're saying, not even one should be reported. What we're saying is that no woman should die. Okay, so even with neonatal deaths, we expect 0 to actually die. So we can also see that we have Katete and Petauke also having a high number, and also Chipata. You see, Chipata is also about 576. We have a total of about 1,892 deaths in total. Okay, but I think for
Jubel Zulu, Chipata District, Eastern Province.
That health story wraps up our tonight's edition of The Main News. But before we go, a quick look at the headlines once again. President Hichilema honors 22 Zambians. Councils warned against exploiting citizens seeking land. Central Province produces 3 million bags of maize. Plus 1.6 million CDF projects commissioned in Chembe. That's the end of the news. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of everybody involved, my name is Carla Mchima. Good night and God bless.